beat Penn.
They did beat Penn.
Didn't beat Penn anyone cared about. That's very nice of you.
Yeah, for those called James last year.
All right, he's there now.
Well, no, he's in Chicago.
No, he's at Penn now.
No, he's in Chicago.
Oh, he moved from Penn.
He was at Penn. He was in Chicago.
I beat him and
Yeah.
Hunter.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah, I beat him and James last year. I think so.
Apparently David Drew has a fake leg.
I don't know. You got me.
Where'd you get that from?
No, so I fence too, and apparently he fences, and he won like the wheelchair fencing nationals, and I was like, that doesn't make any sense.
He won the wheelchair?
Yeah, there's wheelchair fencing, and he won nationals for wheelchair fencing.
What a baller.
But it didn't make sense because he looks like an able-bodied person, right?
Oh yeah, he looks all normal.
Yeah, and it turns out he's like missing one half of one of his legs.
That's
That's a loop.
really cool.
You got people missing 2 legs.
People missing all of it.
He's only missing one leg.
There's more than one leg.
You can only hit up. You can't hit below.
Yeah.
Not how wheelchair fencing works. It'd be a little cheap. There'd be a rational reason.
This packet does have a lot of questions about the rules of wheelchair fencing, so you're in good shape.
All right, I'm glad.
All right, this is round 3. This is by Colonel Bai and the University of Ottawa.
Colonel.
It's a high school in Canada.
Oh, Colonel Bai.
You gotta read those Ontario.
Can you skip the pike questions?
I will skip all toss-ups in the Northern Pike. All right. Here is toss-up 1. These structures are arranged along the spadix in members of the Araceae family and are arranged in heads in members of Compositae. In a model of these structures, A, B, and C-type transcription factors direct cell division and patterning in them. Generally, these structures can be thought to consist of 3 whorls called the perianth, androecium, and gynoecium. In dicots, separate parts of these structures appear in sets of 4 or 5. Need more.
Flowers.
Yes. At the end of the second of these conflicts, one of the countries involved ceded territory in the Treaty of Bucharest and the Treaty of Constantinople. 10 points each. In a series of early 20th century conflicts, the first of which was won by Anti-Ottoman League. Answer? The Balkan Wars. The Balkan Wars increased the Serbian nationalism that led to the assassination of this Archduke by Gavrilo Princip, a member of the Black Hand. His death was the immediate cause for World War I. This country was the instigator and loser of the Second Balkan War. Byzantine Emperor Basil II earned his nickname by blinding thousands of soldiers from this country after the Battle of Cleion.
Bulgaria.
For 20. Lots of 2. In this country, the Pinstech Institute and a site at Kahuta were created as part of Project 706. Atrocities committed by this country's military during Operation Searchlight were decried in the Blood Telegram. With its eastern neighbor, this country signed the Simla Agreement and fought the Kargil War. This country was Islamized by Zia-ul-Haq, who came to power by overthrowing Zulfikar Ali.
Pakistan.
Yes.
That's the one.
Yeah.
The cover artwork on this band's debut album, Hybrid Theory, features a winged soldier, and the most successful single from that album was In the End, 10 points each. This American rock band, fronted by Chester Bennington, who have also written the theme song for every live-action Transformers film. This other vocalist of Linkin Park is the band's rapper. He also founded the rap group Fort Minor.
Yes.
The music video for this Linkin Park song from the album Meteora follows the daily life of an artistic but socially ostracized student. The lyrics of this song include, all I want to do is be more like me and be less like you.
No.
Good Linkin Park knowledge, you lose 500 points.
So edgy. I'm so edgy you can't even.
Toss-up 3. One character in this story describes how he has to step aside when men spit rice pudding at him, since they lose their appetite after experiencing a certain procedure for 6 hours straight. In this story, a character is discovered asleep at 2 in the morning, despite being required to salute his captain every hour, leading him to be whipped across the face. A gravestone in this story prophesies the return of a commandant who is revered by the officer. In this story, the officer...
In the penal code.
Yes.
So thank you, also.
In the following about a certain class of subatomic particles for 10 points each. Particles are divided into bosons, which have integer spins, and the class of particles named for this man, which have half integer spin. This Italian physicist helped create the first nuclear reactor at the University of Chicago. These fermions obey the Pauli exclusion principle, but are not affected by the strong force. When they have no charge, they are called neutrinos.
Yeah, I guess.
Leptons.
This most massive lepton was discovered by Martin Pearl. It's so heavy that it can decay into hadrons, and its neutrino counterpart was discovered by the deliciously named donut experiment.
Count.
30.
Donut experiment.
Plus 4. This thinker used the phrase double reciprocal incarnation to describe his idea of the basis of sexual desire. This man used the example of being unable to find Pierre in a cafe to explain the title concept of the chapter, The Origin of Negation. He described the example of a man who acts a little too rapid and a little too eagerly because,
Sartre?
yes.
He used the Pierre thing.
Like Sobek, he was the son of the war goddess Neith, for 10 points each, and Miss Serpent, who attacks Ra's solar barge every night. Answer? This fiendish desert god helps Ra fight Epep each night. This god killed and dismembered his brother Osiris, after which he fought a protracted war with his nephew Horus over control of Egypt.
Set.
After Seth ate some of this food in which Horus had ejaculated, Horus was able to call his semen from within Set, and thus prove his superiority over him.
That is.
You have 30 points. This city's Art Deco Kavanaugh building was the first in the world to have centralized air conditioning. A large cemetery in this city is located in one of its wealthiest neighborhoods, Recoleta. This city is home to a stadium called La Bombonera, which is home to the Boca Juniors football club. The Teatro Colón, this city's opera house, and the enormous Plaza de la República, which contains this city's giant obelisk, are both located along its 14-lane wide 9 de Julio Avenue, which is the widest in the world. Its Plaza de Mayo is home to It's home to a presidential palace called Casa Rosada, or the Pink House. For 10 points, this city on the south end of the Rio de la Plata, the capital of Argentina. Time of Buenos Aires.
Most Hispanics.
Oh my
except
gosh.
Same.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean.
Class of 6. During this battle, a force led by Robert Abercrombie attempted to spike enemy cannons, but only managed to temporarily disable 7. The band of the losing side of this battle played The World Turned Upside.
Georgetown.
Yes. After an uprising in this country, the native leader Ted Berry offered to murder its imprisoned governor with his spear. In this country, whose first European settlement was established by Arthur Phillip at Sydney, its state of New South Wales was originally used as a British penal colony. William Bligh was overthrown as governor of New South Wales in this rebellion, which resulted from his attempts to curtail trade of its namesake liquor. This rebellion was led by John MacArthur and George Johnston. The Castle Hill Rebellion was led by prisoners exiled to Australia for participating in this other uprising. This rebellion is sometimes named for a secret society founded by Wolfe Tone.
Greeks, okay.
No, Irish Rebellion of 1798 were the United Irish
Wanted the
Rebellion.
other, why they were sent there, it wasn't an Australian rebellion.
Awesome 7. In one of this author's novels, Leach and Johnson attempt a mutiny aboard the Ghost. In that work, Maud Brewster is courted by Humphrey Van Weyden and a man whose brother is named Death. In another of his works, the protagonist is kidnapped by Judge Miller's gardener and quickly learns the law of the club. In that novel by this author, 3 fools die.
London.
Yes.
Yeah.
After being cooked in Lao Tzu's crucible for 49 days, this character gains the ability to see through any disguise using his fiery eyes golden gaze. 10 points each. And this Chinese mythological figure who was born from a stone egg and trapped under a mountain for 500 years after he urinates on the hand of the Buddha.
So cool.
Sun
Wukong accompanies the monk Xuanzang and the sand demon Sha Wu Jing to Vulture Peak in India in this book, one of the 4 great novels of Chinese literature. It was written by Wu Chang'an.
10 cents.
Xi Jiu Ji.
There you go.
The other companion of Xuanzang, Zhu Bajie, is an anthropomorphic one of these animals, which is the meaning of his surname. He was reincarnated as this animal for sexually harassing the moon goddess Chang'e.
Okay.
30 points.
Oh.
Class of 8. In P sub xy and T sub xy diagrams for binary mixtures, these quantities mark the intersection of the bubble point and dew-point curves. According to Troughton's rule for liquids, dividing the change in enthalpy by this quantity will often yield a change in entropy equal to about 88 joules per Kelvin per mole. The change in this quantity for a solution can be calculated by multiplying the molality of the solution, the Van Hoff factor, and a constant termed K sub B. When this point is reached, the vapor pressure is equivalent to the...
Boiling point.
Yes. This notation can be used to circumvent the need for parentheses, as a plus b multiplied by c is expressed differently from a plus b all multiplied by c, 10 points each. In this notation, in which the operation is placed after the operands, in contrast to the more usual infix notation.
Postfix.
Yeah. These data structures can be used to implement reverse Polish notation by popping the operands, performing the operation, and pushing the answer back onto them.
Stacks.
Data in stacks is stored in this order, which is why only their topmost element is accessible. This order is contrasted with that used by queues.
Lipo.
Plus 9. Leaves from the bile tree are offered to this deity on a holiday that commemorates his performing of the Tandava Nrityā. A version of this god, called Bhikshatana, is a beggar who traveled carrying a skull in repentance for cutting off the fifth head of Brahma. This god is surrounded by a ring of flames and statues depicting him as the lord of the dance, not a Raja.
Shiva.
Yes. The city is home to the Sainte Chapelle, a chapel commissioned by King Louis IX to house Jesus' crown of thorns, 10 points each. In this city, also home to churches like Saint-Sulpice and La Madeleine, as well as Les Invalides and Père Lachaise Cemetery.
Paris.
This stadium, the largest in France, is located just north of Paris in Saint-Denis. It was the venue of the 1998 World Cup final, and it is presently home to both the French national soccer and rugby union teams.
It's a French stadium.
I have nothing.
Answer?
The Colosseum.
The Stade de France. Paris's district La Défense is home to a massive one of these structures, inaugurated on the bicentennial of the French Revolution. Another huge one of these structures stands at the western end of the Champs-Élysées.
Art.
Yes, 20. Lesson 10. This character's boss says that he thought this character was joking about his diabetes, which is funny because it's a very serious disease and I don't like you.
Oh.
This character says, yeah, hit that, when he walks in on his stuffed dog Rowdy humping his friend's leg.
Turk.
Yes.
Yeah. Make sure it didn't say JD.
This character uses accounts from the L'Etoile newspaper and Mr. Bouvet to help solve the murder mystery of perfume shop worker Marie Roger, 10 points each, and his detective who, in another story, recovers a certain item from Minister D.
Probably.
Sherlock Holmes.
Auguste Dupin.
Oh.
See, Auguste Dupin discovers that a sailor's escaped orangutan killed Madame Camille L'Espanaye with a razor and stuffed her daughter's corpse up the chimney in this short story. Yes. The Murders in the Rue Morgue was written by this American author who wrote a poem about a bird that repeats nevermore in The Raven. That's 20 points. Fashion score of 0 and 315.
Yeah, that's
Good. Here is toss of 11.
Drive my Turk
A red one of these structures in Scotland is shaped like 3 elongated hexagons because of its unusual cantilever design and is named for the River Forth. The largest of one type of these structures is partially named for the Kaikyo rail line. One of these structures, which is made of stone, was moved to Arizona from London and is confused with one which is named for the Tower of London. The first of these to be made of cast iron was built in 1781 and is located near Coalbrookdale in England. John Augustus Roebling designed one of these in New York City that crossed.
A bridge?
Mhm.
Oh.
The thinker engaged in a long dispute with John Wallace over his essay De Corpore, 10 points each, a famous author who argued that a war of all against all could only be prevented by a strong central sovereign in his treatise Leviathan.
Hobbes.
In Leviathan, Hobbes argued that this type of agreement is formed when individuals cede their rights to the sovereign, thus ending the state of nature. This type of agreement is the name of a work by Jean-Jacques Rousseau.
Social contract.
This thinker denounced Rousseau's social contract in his book General Idea of the Revolution. This father of anarchism declared that property is theft in his book What is Property?
True enough.
The third. Lesson 12. The cosmic censorship hypothesis sets an upper limit on this quantity for a black hole of a given mass. A quantity similar to this one is crossed with this quantity in the first term of the Laplace-Runge lens vector. Black holes with 0 value for this quantity are described by the Einstein field equation solution named for Reisner and Nordstrom. Kepler's second law.
Electric charge.
I'm sorry? Kepler's second law is a result of the conservation of this quantity. For a particle in a circular orbit, this quantity equals mass times radius times velocity, and the time derivative of this quantity is torque. For 10 points, in this quantity equals the product of moment of inertia and angular velocity, whose linear analog equals mass times velocity. Yes.
Sort of.
A cook named Christine advises this play's title character against pursuing her dream to open an inn near Lake Como, 10 points each. In this play in which John decapitates a pet canary after having an affair with the titled aristocratic woman who commits suicide with a razor. Answer? This is Miss Julie. Miss Julie was written by August Strindberg, who hails from this home country of 2011 Nobel laureate Thomas Tranströmer. This country's Astrid Lindgren created Pippi Longstocking. Answer? Sweden. Julie's lover Jean is a person with this profession. Bertie Wooster employs one of these men named Reginald Jeeves in many of P.G. Woodhouse's stories. Answer? This is Butler. So, here is toss of 13. A god sitting in this character's lap erases memory, creating a situation in which the inward fire eats the soft marrow away, and the internal wound bleeds on in silence. This character tricks King Earbus into giving her as much land as can be covered by an ox hide, which she cuts into strips to yes. These cells can be harvested from the inner cell mass of a blastocyst. 10 points each. They have these pluripotent cells which can differentiate into any of 3 germ layers. The harvesting of these cells from surplus attempts at in vitro fertilization is a source of controversy.
Stem cells.
Any more?
Embryonic stem cells.
Yes. Unlike totipotent cells, embryonic stem cells are unable to differentiate into the cells that comprise this organ. The umbilical cord connects the fetus to this organ during pregnancy.
Placenta.
Embryonic stem cells can form these benign tumors, which generally contain tissue from all 3 germ layers. These tumors often contain hair or bone tissue, and in rare cases contain fully formed organs.
Yeah, they're the really nasty ones.
Oh, that sounds.
Answer.
Nothing.
Teratomas.
That's sweet.
Lesson 14. Gerald Kaufman decried this party's manifesto as the longest suicide note in history. During one election, a newspaper asked the last person to leave the country, please turn out the lights if this party were to win. This party implemented the reforms proposed by the Beveridge Report. Yes. This country sent young women to America in the King's Daughters program and chartered the company of 100 associates. 10 points each. Identify this country which hired Giovanni de Verrazzano to explore the Atlantic coast.
France.
This French explorer claimed Canada for France while exploring the St. Lawrence River. He was told about Saguenay, a gold city inhabited by blonde people, by Chief Donnacona of Hochelaga.
Calcium.
This other mythical gold city took its name from an equally mythical chief who covered himself in gold dust and jumped into a lake. Walter Raleigh searched for it in the highlands of Guyana.
Oh yeah, this is a Canada. I totally learned that in Canadian elementary school. Jacques Calcium.
Also 15. It's not Aeetes, but Jason married the daughter of a king who shares his name with this man, and who died with his daughter Glauce after she received a cursed dress. This man's son committed suicide by throwing himself off the city walls because it was prophesied that the death of Menachaius would save the city. This man was the brother of Jocasta, and his wife Eurydice committed suicide after the death of his son Haemon. One of his decrees was broken by... Yes.
I was like, please, that's a classic.
Then the following about Latin terms used in legal terminology for 10 points each. This prerogative writ is granted by the Supreme Court of the United States when it reviews a case from a lower court. This term translates as apprise or inform. Granted to Guantanamo inmates in Boumediene versus Bush, this other prerogative writ requires a detaining jurisdiction to show why it should keep a person prisoner. This term translates as you may have the body. Prerogative writs are sometimes called this kind of writ. This term refers to a type of law defined by judges in respect of precedent, following the principle of stare decisis. It is distinguished from civil law and is followed in the U.S. and Britain. Answer. Common law.
It's not Latin. I don't think it wanted a Latin term.
I thought the was Latin.
Lesson 16. Some characters in this play listen for the ticking of a half-hunter watch that a character received from his grandfather. In this play, a man forgets the lyrics to a round about a cook who beats a dog to death with a ladle. A character in this play gives another man a turnip after being asked for a carrot.
Wait, I forgot it.
Yes. It is the first rite through which a Christian child passes, though some sects believe it should be withheld until the person in question can profess their own faith. 10 points each. In this sacrament, usually consisting of a blessing and the immersion of a person in water.
Baptism.
This practice was based on the premise that the church possessed a treasury of merit earned by saints that could be applied to sinners. Martin Luther condemned the Catholic Church's granting of these remissions.
What are the things called that you give people who wish to
Answer.
Pencil.
Indulgence. Unlike an indulgence which is given by the church, this act of moving a sinner from a state of sin to a state of grace or righteousness is done solely by God.
What's that thing that God can do?
Giving grace.
Answer.
Giving grace.
Justification.
And
Lesson 17. A non-zero element of a ring R is one of these elements if it is not a unit, and for any elements x and y in R, if it divides x times y, it also divides x or y. A number n is...
It's prime.
Yes.
there you go. What is that?
It's the it's how prime numbers work.
In the following about U.S. involvement in Iran for 10 points each. This former Allied commander was the president of the U.S. when the CIA helped overthrow Mohammad Mossadegh in 1953 during Operation Ajax. This crisis occurred after the American embassy in Iran was captured and its staff taken captive during Jimmy Carter's term. Although it plagued Carter's presidency, the crisis ended soon after he left office. The Reagan administration triggered the Iran-Contra affair when they violated this amendment by selling arms to Iran to fund anti-communist efforts in Nicaragua.
Is that what the bowling amendment is?
Yeah.
Bowling?
So,
So it gives you the hiding. Nothing to do.
Clause 18. In a painting inspired by the art of this country, a woman in a black dress with a red sash tied around her waist stands on a blue rug. That painting, inspired by this country's art, hangs in the Freer Gallery and is partially titled Rose and Silver. The style of Whistler's Peacock Room was inspired by art from this country. In this country, many paintings of beautiful women, called Bijanga, were created by you tomorrow.
Japan?
Yes.
Okay. Making sure it was a Japan.
This law is a consequence of the first law of thermodynamics and the fact that enthalpy is a state function, 10 points each. In this law, which states that the enthalpy change of a reaction is independent of its pathway, it allows one to find the total enthalpy change by summing the enthalpy changes of intermediate steps. The Born-Haber cycle uses Hess's law to calculate this quantity for an ionic compound. This quantity is defined as the energy released by the formation of a crystal from a metal and a nonmetal.
Lattice energy.
When using Hess's law to calculate lattice energy, the enthalpy change for one of the intermediate steps is equal to this quantity for the metal atom. It is defined as the energy needed to remove one electron from the atom.
Yeah.
Ionization energy.
Third. Clause 19. A child of questionable parentage born into this family was known as the infans Romanus. A member of this family had Alfonso of Aragon smothered with a pillow. One member of this family led the Romagna campaign and took the title of Duke of Valentinois. Johann Burchard described an event held by this family at which 50 prostitutes crawled around the floor picking.
That's the family. That's the
In a poem, one of these animals came to my water trough on a hot, hot day. 10 points each. Identify this animal, which that poem speaker dared not kill. In a Rudyard Kipling story, Rikki Tikki Tavi protects a family from a pair of them, named Nag and Nagaini.
Snakes.
This author wrote the aforementioned poem Snake. He kept falling afoul of obscenity laws with books like The Rainbow and Lady Chatterley's Lover. After throwing a log at a snake, the narrator of another poem wishes for its return and compares it to this other literary figure. The man who shoots this beast with a crossbow later laments there being water, water everywhere, but not any drop to drink.
Albatross.
Yeah. Last lesson. Prokofiev's C major third work in this genre begins with an elegiac clarinet solo. Bartok's first work in this genre begins with ominous repeated notes in the timpani. Shostakovich's first one of these works uses an orchestra of only strings and trumpet. Gershwin's only work in this genre also begins with a timpani solo and is in F major. Rachmaninoff's second work of this genre was his first piece after a period of writer's block. Paul Wittgenstein commissioned Prokofiev's fourth and Ravel's D minor works in this genre, both of which only use the soloist's left hand.
Piano concerto?
Yes.
You don't know that Paul Wittgenstein?
No, I do. I just thought.
Identify the following with the paintings of Diego Velázquez for 10 points each. Velázquez depicted himself in this painting that includes a dwarf standing next to a dog. In this painting, a reflection shows Philip IV watching his daughter, the Infanta Margarita.
Must be neat.
This painting is sometimes called Las Lanzas for the numerous lances in its upper right corner. It depicts Justin of Nassau giving the key to the titled Dutch town to the Spaniard Ambrosio Spinola during the 80 Years' War.
Surrender of bread.
Francis Bacon has painted several reinterpretations of Velázquez's portrait of one of these people. In Bacon's version, this person is screaming.
Oh.
Third.
I thought they did piano concertos already, so I didn't
There was a bonus part.
That was Bacon, yeah, cheers.
Yeah. So they-
All right, that is 10 and 6:30. Everybody?
I didn't get lucky and now I'll come up again.
Yes.
Can you stay in here? We're going to.
103, Sherwood,
120.
Georgetown. Big game. Big game, big game.
Good game.